With everyone writing intros, are we including all of the intros for every episode, or are we like picking a favorite? I don't remember what we decided, because last time it was all like gospels, so it made sense to have all three, but I don't know if we want to always do that going forward.
Maybe we could pick a favorite. Or, I mean, it depends how long the intros are, too.
Yeah, because I feel like in some cases they might just be like overly repetitive.
Yeah, it depends on the movie. Yeah. Mine for this one is incredibly short.
Oh, me too.
Okay, good.
Mine's pretty short.
I wonder if we have the same intro.
I actually didn't mine like is kind of in the end of a sentence because I didn't even know how to end it.
Okay, perfect.
What is the feature-length podcast? Anyone?
The feature-length podcast is a show where three idiots talk about film and entertainment.
Good answer.
Hey guys, what's up?
Hey, are you talking to us?
Yeah. I'm talking to the voices in my head.
Like I truly don't know. It felt like a fever dream. I swear to God, I could not.
It sounds so stupid hearing that.
If you're listening to this is a podcast.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast, a podcast where we talk about movies and TV for a feature length of time.
Okay, well, who wants to go first then?
You can go first, Dan. You can have the inaugural intro.
Okay. I'm Thinking of Ending Things is a Netflix original film from 2020, written and directed by Charlie Kaufman, and loosely based on the 2016 book of the same name, written by Ian Reid. It focuses on the fear, panic, and discomfort associated with feeling powerless in a relationship or situation you don't want to be in. As for what this film contains beyond that, I would give a synopsis of the plot, except it doesn't have one, so I guess I'll say some other details about it. It stars Jessie Buckley, Jesse Plemons, Toni Collette, and David Thewlis. Most of the film is in a 4:3 aspect ratio, switching briefly at a few moments during the runtime. The film is 2 hours and 14 minutes long. Thank you.
Nice. Very good.
You got all the important points in there.
It's just the Wikipedia.
You know when I have to resort to technical specs?
Yeah. Unfortunate.
That's bad.
Okay, here's mine. I'm thinking of ending things. This movie makes me think about ending things. The end. That's my intro for this episode.
Okay, I have one that is maybe the longest of the three of us for probably the first and only time ever, but it's still not that long. Okay. Have you ever wanted to watch a movie that all takes place in an old janitor's head? If your answer to that question was yes, 2020's I'm Thinking of Ending Things might be for you. But also, I just spoiled the whole thing, so it might not be that enjoyable. Meaning, if you still choose to watch it, you'll probably feel the same way I did. Pretty let down. The movie was based on a 2016 novel by Ian Reid, was adapted into a film by Charlie Kaufman, who normally makes great content, such as Being John Malkovich, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and Anomalisa. It stars great actors, Jesse Plemons, Jessie Buckley, Toni Collette, and David Thewlis, and from the trailer alone looked like it was going to be a mind-bending psychological thriller about a woman who can't stop thinking about how she wants to break up with her boyfriend on her way to meet his parents. Instead, it is a film that, to me personally, felt overly confusing and pretentious and slow, and I just didn't like it. That's my intro.
That was the most cohesive of the three.
Great intros all around, though.
Thank you
I
so
think
much.
we really captured the energy and the spirit of this
I think
fucking
you get
movie.
it, yeah.
So
now what, guys?
Okay, should we do recommendations off the top?
Yeah, we should also just say welcome back to...
Oh yeah, we didn't really introduce ourselves in any of those.
I'm Marco.
I'm Daniel.
I'm Carolina.
Normally we're more upbeat about stuff we're talking about,
Yeah.
but every once in a while we like to just shit on something.
It's been a while.
This week
It has been a while.
This week we watched a film that has somehow less of a plot than Mother.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Mother on this episode, and we'll get there.
I'm sure it'll come up. Comes up every episode.
Yeah, I mean, it's fitting. It is sort of the baseline from which we have all our criticism.
That was like, the Mother episode was like, you know how the Harry Potter movies only hit their stride starting with the third one?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we also only started to hit our stride
as
with
a
the third
podcast.
episode.
Yeah, agreed.
And that's why it's fun to return to form and pick something we know we'll probably all not love.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. And also, I will start drinking at some point.
Nice.
Oh, I already am.
Oh, perfect. I'm waiting to get... I started
drinking when I was doing research and writing my intro, so...
Nice. I had to drink to get through it.
Yeah.
I, after about 10 minutes, went and took a couple shots, because I was like, I can't do this.
Shots.
I can't do this sober.
Okay,
I took a couple shots of
I
Fireball.
watched it high yesterday, and I liked it a lot more than when I watched it initially fully sober.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
That makes perfect sense.
So if you did have to watch it, I recommend a substance.
If you have to watch it.
If anyone ever
sober.
forces you to sit down in front of a TV and watch this film.
That's a great segue into would we recommend this movie?
Yeah.
If you didn't have to, would you recommend it?
Interesting. Yeah.
If you weren't being held at gunpoint.
You know, I was thinking a lot about this because we just introduced this segment. And
the recommendations?
Yeah. So for anyone listening, this is a relatively new segment for us. And I feel kind of bad because last week, or actually not last week, that's not true. But
2 episodes ago.
Our last, full group episode, when we introduced recommends, we were all basically saying that the thing was more or less something that you would 100% recommend to anyone. And I feel I was like, I really don't want to say this is something I can recommend to no one. I would say that if you are a really pretentious film school student, and I self-identify as a pretentious film school student, you would probably enjoy this. And also, if you are a weird English literary nerd, I know there's also lots of those types of references in this as well, super in-depth, literary deep cuts. So, if you are doing a master's degree in English lit, or if you are, a weird film school nerd that likes movies that don't make sense, I would recommend this movie to you. Otherwise, you can wholeheartedly skip this movie. It was a fantastic waste of 2 hours and 15 minutes, by the way. Not even an hour and a half.
No.
Unbelievable.
When I was thinking, okay, here's some... I guess, are you done with
I am
this?
done. That is my recommend.
I'm going to take over, if you don't mind, Carol.
Go ahead.
Marco. So, yesterday is when I rewatched this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think yesterday is when all of us rewatched it.
Yeah, for the first time ever, I think we all watched it in the same day.
Well, we were all putting it off.
Yeah.
We also planned this last minute, so...
True.
Also yesterday I was here at Marco's because we watched The Batman, which is a 3-hour movie, and this movie felt like the longer of the two still.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've watched... Okay, so I've seen this movie once before, and for some reason, just thinking about what happened in the movie before I did the rewatch, I was like, yeah, I think it was a 90-minute movie. How could it be anything more because nothing happened in this movie? And then I was like, okay, I'm just gonna, after we finish this Batman rewatch, I'm just gonna go bang this out at home, just get it over with, write my stuff for the episode. And then I looked it up and it was 2 hours and 14 minutes. So I was like, are you fucking kidding me? This is the rest of my evening.
Yeah,
that's the worst part. The pacing and runtime is, this is such a nothing happens in this movie. I mean, we'll get more into it, but oh my god, what a slog.
Yeah.
Okay, now before I pass it to you, Carol, I want to say, and I'll touch on this when we do our segment of trying to say good things about this movie as well, but overall, one thing this movie does do actually a good job of is mind fucking with you of how it feels to be in a situation that you want to get out of at all costs. And it's kind of meta because you want to stop watching the movie at all costs, and maybe that was on purpose, I don't know, but it really does accurately depict a horrible situation that you're
stuck in.
Yeah, that you're stuck in.
Yeah.
So whether or not that was intentional, they did a good job with that. I'll leave it there for now.
Well, who do you recommend it to, Dan?
Oh yeah, no one.
Nice.
I can't recommend, okay, I'll recommend this to someone who, if you're someone who admires really good cinematography, but can stand a story that has absolutely no plot or narrative thrust at all, then you might find something in this movie to take with you. But I can't I don't know if there's a certain demographic that I can wholeheartedly recommend this to on any front.
Yeah, so I guess I'll do a brief synopsis of my experience with it. I saw the trailer when it came out, and I was really excited for it because it looked really good. I liked both actors, so I watched it, I think, the day or weekend it came out on Netflix, and as I alluded to in my introduction, I did not like it. So then I rewatched it yesterday for this because I was like, maybe I forgot something. You know what? And also, usually for these things, when I rewatch a movie or have to think about it again, I do like it more. So I was like, there's a chance. There is a chance. And I was high this time. So you know what? I think that helped. It helped in one way in that a lot of their philosophical conversation maybe made me think a bit more, and I was able to care about it a little more, but also it did make it feel like it took 10 hours instead of 2 hours. I thought it was never going to end. I watched it while folding my laundry and while taking a bath and while getting ready for bed and doing dishes. Like, I feel like I was able to do so much while watching this film and taking notes. Yeah, so who do I recommend it to? Initially, I was in the camp of no one, but doing my research, I noticed that somehow critics seemed to really like this movie generally. Mm-hmm. So I guess I do have to now fall into the Marco's camp of, I guess, if you're an annoying film critic or not annoying, sorry. I'm going to be a film student soon. I'll probably get more annoying and you'll all need to put up with me, but...
Yeah, but there are annoying people in every career.
Yeah. So like if you like things that make you think and I guess are just like so like deep and like philosophical and like stuff like that, maybe you'll enjoy it. But pretty much everyone I know who's said, "Oh, I'm thinking of watching that," I've been like, "Don't waste your time. It's not gonna be fun."
One note I should add, I would recommend this to one person, and it would be Darren Aronofsky.
Yeah.
I think he would love this movie.
I think he would too, but I feel like, and maybe this can segue into, if we want to start talking about positives, which let's just say, like, this is a new segment we're also trying to do, where anytime we're talking about a movie that the three of us generally consider to be bad, rather than just shit on it the whole time, we kind of want to say some positives up front. That way, like,
fair,
if you like it, you have something to listen to, and also there's generally something positive to say about anything that you watch. So
yeah, we also don't fully want to be assholes.
Yeah.
Because a lot of work did go into this movie, like all
Absolutely.
movies.
And I will say, like, I remember after my first time watching it, which, funny enough, you had mentioned, Dan, like, we watched The Batman yesterday and then watched this. I think my first time watching this, and I could be wrong, but was the day the Batman trailer released? The first Batman trailer? Like, really? I could have the dates wrong about when it came out on Netflix, but I specifically remember watching this with Madison, and for some reason in my mind, like, in terms of, like, the atmosphere of the situation, it reminds me of the atmosphere of the situation, because I was with her when we watched the first Batman trailer. And I think that happened on the same day, which is crazy to think about.
Wow.
But yeah.
That very first teaser,
the one that is incredible, and we did a bonus episode on.
Right.
And you know what? I think it was that, because that was shortly after Mother, and my takeaway after watching this movie the first time, and I said it in the group chat, and I stand by it after this, is like, as with everything, this is sort of, I think, what Darren Aronofsky was, like, trying to do with Mother. And what I mean by that is, you can tell this movie is crafted. Like, it doesn't just exist. Like, you can tell that, like, a lot of time and effort went into it, at least. Whereas Mother seemed very, like, shambles. And also, Mother wanted to be, like, so deep, like, there's so many different levels, but there isn't. There's just one level. Whereas with this movie, like, legitimately, I do acknowledge that there are, and I've read just in some reviews and stuff, like, tons of literary references and stuff that completely went over my head. Like, I fully acknowledge that. So unlike Mother, like, there actually is stuff that you could unpack in this if you wanted to. I just don't care, and I don't enjoy that type of experience. But so that's sort of one positive, is, like, at least it is substantive in a way that Mother wasn't.
One thing to add, so you said there's a bunch of literary references, and, like, if you have knowledge of those things, you could get a lot of that stuff out of this movie then. But the thing that, like, this and also Mother did that was wrong is, if you base your whole plot on literary references but don't also have it make sense out of context from that stuff, then who is it for other than people who need outside context?
Exactly.
Which should never be the case.
Exactly.
Also, sorry, I know we're in the positive section, but I just need to say...
Are we officially in the positive section?
Yeah, we're somewhat.
Oh.
Yeah, but
well, like... We're striding into the positive section.
Yeah, so before we're fully into it, I do need to say...
This is the purgatory section?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, they do have all those literary references, but pretty much they are always just one of the characters saying verbatim a very long speech or quote from a reference that you see like in his bedroom. So it's not really like wink wink, maybe you'll find it, fun Easter egg. It's like, no, this is in your face, 10 pages from this book that you'll see in his bedroom later, without explanation or context.
Agreed. It's not that it's good. It's just as opposed to...
But I just don't want to, like, fool people. The way you were saying it made it seem like it could be, like, a fun thing to discover. It's not.
Yeah,
it's
sure,
fully,
fair.
Yeah, it's like a slideshow of literary references presented to you.
It absolutely is. My only thing is that at least it's, like, not the Bible. Like, at least they, like, went one step above.
I will give them that.
It's like... They really had to search out actual literary references and not just... That's my only thing of, like, it surpasses it in that way. But other than that, it's basically the same.
Being positive for a bit.
Okay, so I am going to start with this positive thing that is not really about the movie. It's more of a conceptual thing, so we'll start with this first. And it comes from stuff I've been thinking a lot about anyway that this kind of applies to, which is this, okay? I appreciate the fact that Netflix gave money and like this movie like existed outside of a movie that nobody would ever see, just like the existence of it conceptually. And what I mean by that is I have been thinking a lot about the little bit of frustration that, like, and we sort of touched on this in the Interstellar episode, that movies have sort of become like the proximity a movie is to being a drama is like whether, like, what makes it good or not. So, like, whether or not it perfectly has, like, the typical dramatic 3-act structure and yada yada yada, and how, like, that has very much started to define, like, a good movie, and how there's lots of stuff that gets treated as lesser than when it's not that necessarily. And we talked about specifically, like, certain genres of movies, or, like, comedy movies, for example, how, like, comedy is always considered lesser than and yada yada. And so I was thinking a lot about, in general, just, like, the diversity of art. And we talk a lot about, within movies, the idea that obviously it's important to have diverse people making and telling stories, because there's only certain types of, like... There are certain types of stories that those types of people would be able to tell that you would miss otherwise, because, like, a straight white person would not necessarily think to tell that type of story, etc., right? But, like, if you go the step above that into just, like, human art, like, just the category of, like, humans, I feel like if everything is just a drama, there is also stuff that gets missed about the human experience. And, like, the perfect way to think about this is to look at even visual art, right? Like, there are very realist visual artists. There are people like Picasso who are super, like, surrealist. There are people like Monet who are impressionists. Like, there's all these different types of visual art. And, you know, if every type of visual art was just one type of visual art, then there would be so many things you miss about the way it presents different emotion and, like, involves you in that experience. And I think the same is true for film. Like, and that's been a little bit frustrating for me, sort of, just the trends of how movies are going now. And even, like, most of the time when a studio puts out an original movie, it is either just, like, an Oscar bait drama, or even, like, the trend of most superhero movies nowadays are just, like, generic, solid, dramatic movie, as opposed to taking really big swings in either direction. And there are obviously outliers to that. Like, you look at the Thor movies and how those have become, like, prominently, like, comedies at this point, and why, like, how that's been so impactful and helpful for that character, because it allows you to tell certain types of stories and elicit certain emotions that you couldn't otherwise. So in general, just the fact that this, which is very clearly like a surrealist piece of art, which I do not like, I don't like that art style doesn't elicit any emotion in me personally whatsoever, but I think it's important that those types of art pieces still get funding and are allowed to be made and have distribution to be made, because, like, 99% of Netflix originals are just the same piece of crap movie over and over again. And so, like, even though this movie isn't for me, I'm very glad that it is allowed to exist in the form that it allowed. And, like, the fact that there are critics that love it and have an emotional attachment to it, great. Like, could never be me, don't know why, but I think it's just good that, like, this movie had money and a cast and got to exist in a place where people could see it.
Sure.
I guess to jump off that, obviously this movie means something meaningful to Charlie Kaufman.
Yeah.
Because everything in this movie seems extremely purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're just a random viewer like myself, most of it doesn't really mean anything to you, because without a plot that you can just follow without any outside context, there's really, and also very minimal character development at all. Yeah. There's nothing for an outsider to latch onto. This is admirable, though, because it feels like a project that it's as if he was given whatever the budget was for this movie, I'm not sure, whatever that was, to make an extremely personal art project. I described this movie as, rather than a movie, it's more like a series of moving paintings.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing, because movies by definition should be different than like, for example, paintings or other forms of art. But he did what he felt was the thing to do for this movie. So, I mean, all power to him. I've mentioned this before with other movies that we've talked about that I don't necessarily like, but I admire the fact that there is still this form of trust being given to creators by big studios who they know will at least make something that actually means something to them, rather than just, like, there's still budget being allocated for these types of very personal projects rather than just crowd pleasers necessarily. But yeah, just to echo also what you said, it doesn't mean that the audiences are probably going to like it very much.
Yeah.
So you just have to ask, is this a movie for an audience or for the creator?
Yeah.
And this is very much a movie for its own creator, and whatever. It's not like I'm offended by this movie. I just really, really hated watching it.
Yeah, for sure. And to echo off what you're saying too, because I feel like a lot of the times whenever this comes up, there's always pushback. For example, when people talk about, like, there being so many superhero movies and how it floods the market and whatever, a lot of times people push back and say, like, oh, but there's, like, streaming, and, like, it's easier to get a movie distributed now more than ever. And, like, while that's true, because there is so much on streaming, just because your movie gets distributed doesn't mean anyone's gonna fucking watch it. And I appreciate the fact that Netflix had faith enough in this to allow it to be a marketed Netflix original, even though I don't enjoy it and would not recommend it really to anyone. The fact that Netflix saw this weird art piece and was like, maybe this will resonate with people and we should give it a chance to resonate with people and really, like, give it money and whatever, as opposed to, like, the remake of that movie with Addison Rae or whatever. You remember it? There was, like, that romantic comedy. I forget what it is.
She's All That?
Yeah.
She's All That, yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Where it's like, those are the types of movies that
or
are
another Noah Centineo movie.
Yeah, exactly. To All the Boys I've Loved Before, part
those
16.
Those were all good.
Sure. Yeah, okay.
Wait, all? How many were there?
Well, the three To All the Boys films were good. The first one was the best, but the other two were watchable. More watchable than this, like, by far.
Yeah, I know, for sure. But I just mean, like,
the rest of his
like,
films I will not vouch for, but those three.
The kissing booth.
Yeah, so that's I think our points kind of build off each other nicely there. Like, just the fact that this movie exists and is very easily accessible and was pushed to people to be able to try this out.
But honestly, I think that's just because of the people involved. I'm not gonna lie.
There is a lot of talent behind it.
Fair, absolutely, yeah, there is.
And, like, I think it's partially because of, like, Charlie Kaufman being involved and, like, because he wrote, I don't know. I personally am obsessed with Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Like, it's one of my probably top 10 films of all time. Like, I think it's a perfect film. And so, like, maybe they just thought he's involved and, like, this is, like, not the same by any means, but explores some similar themes. So maybe they were hoping it would have a similar fan base and reaction, and were probably proven wrong.
Yeah.
Fair.
I think more than anything, I like the precedent that this movie sets for the future of the quality of, or, like, the integrity of movies that we could see on streaming. And we even, like, we're past the point already where streaming movies have been nominated for Oscars, which a few years ago was a brand new precedent in and of itself. So there's a lot of shit that is given to streaming because it's such an accessible medium that's just, like, overloaded with all the content you can ever think of. But within that, there's room for these actual movies in there too. And
to a degree, I almost feel like this is at its core, this is what streaming, like, can and should be, almost, because, like it should be making like movies accessible to people that they probably wouldn't spend $13 to go see in a theater.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, like theater movies are theater movies. Like we're all gonna go see the next big Marvel movie or Star Wars, probably not. DC, probably not. But you know what I mean? Like the next big franchise movie. Like the whole, like the real exciting and cool thing about streaming, at least to me, is the idea that like you could now have accessibility to watch Oscar movies. Like we've talked about this in our group chat, like leading up to this year's Oscars, where Carol watched everything and Dan and I saw exactly like 5 movies. But a big part of that is like 3/4 of the movies nominated for Oscars just don't play at our local like theater.
So you either have to like pirate them or just hope that they're on a streaming service.
Or
exactly.
live in a bigger city than Windsor.
Yeah, well,
too late. I bought a house.
That's asking a bit much.
That's not happening. But yeah, so like that's always been my dream of like the future of streaming, of like have this really be a place where you can like explore like new weird art,
niche stuff.
Yeah. So the fact that this exists on there is kind of nice.
Yeah, because I also appreciate that I was able to watch this weird artsy film and then decide that I hated it, you know?
Exactly.
Because otherwise I would have
Without
seen the
wasting
trailer, would have thought that I loved it, and then if I wasn't able to watch it, it would just be one of those like, oh, I missed it. I probably would have loved. I would have been upset about it, but now I know.
Yeah. Now you know.
And it didn't directly cost you any money.
Exactly.
Just like you're paying for the subscription anyway. So
Yeah, for sure.
It's thrown in there.
Although Netflix really is testing my patience. It's like every 2 months they're like, it's going up another $1. And I'm like, okay, Netflix.
Disney Plus too, right? I think
Disney did too, but they went from like $9 to $11. Netflix is up to like $18 now.
Yeah. But I mean, I think Netflix has better original stuff overall than Disney Plus so far. Not that I think that $18 is
justified,
but I think it's still, and I also don't think that Netflix has a great batting average, but I think it's a just slightly better batting average of original content for the highs that they put out than like Disney Plus so far.
And to be fair, like I pretty much exclusively use Disney Plus to just watch old shit that I couldn't access elsewhere.
Me too.
Like I really, you know, like if we talk, you know, we watch the Marvel shows to stay up to date, but that is not appointment viewing.
Oh no,
like
that's not why I have it. Like the first thing I ever watched when I got Disney Plus was National Treasure.
Yeah, like
that's the first thing.
Yeah, I was like, holy shit, this movie's on there.
Yeah. No, honestly, I watch like the Marvel cartoons from the 90s, or now that they have the Fox catalog on there too as Disney Star, like when I wanted to rewatch all the Alien movies, like I have most of the good ones, but I didn't have like Alien vs Predator and all that crap, so I have to like watch that on there. So stuff like that, but it's not, I'm not going there for new content.
Yeah, I watched like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia from there. That's how I was able to finally start watching that show.
Bob's Burgers is on there.
Oh yeah, that's on there now.
Yeah.
Anyway. It's like it's all the stuff that they've just absorbed by buying different companies. That's the best stuff on there, I think.
Yeah. Well, and also it's like, it's so interesting because we've kind of had this conversation. As you can tell, listeners, we're desperately trying to not talk about the movie. But
I still have positives. We can.
Me too.
We'll get back to
yeah, we'll get there. Yeah. We'll get there.
But I think we should call this episode, like, I'm thinking of ending things / streaming talk.
How about
because it is a streaming
I'm
movie.
thinking of ending things plus.
How about I'm thinking of ending my Netflix subscription?
I'm thinking of... That's really good, yeah. That's great, actually.
Okay, we'll do that. No, but, like, jokes aside, that, like, what I appreciate, like you said, right? Like, and I think we had this conversation, but when Netflix started, it was just Blockbuster for the internet, right? Yeah. Where it was like anything and everything could be on there at any given time, so if you want to watch a movie, check there. And then everything has been fucked because now like other corporations are like exclusively showing the rights to their thing on their own streaming service, which we're basically just creating cable TV again, which is very funny, but whatever.
It's funny, but also infuriating because now it's going to cost more than getting cable ever would have.
Well, but don't worry, because eventually they're just going to come out. They're going to come out with a package where you get all of them
again, and then we're going to reinvent streaming somehow.
Yes,
and become cable again.
It's so frustrating, but like, what I at least appreciate is that as Netflix started to lose the rights to things because of Disney, Apple, Amazon, yada yada, they've genuinely just had to create their own content. And like you said, they don't have a very high batting average, but every once in a while they really have like a hit of like because they gave someone a chance. Whereas like Disney Plus, as much as I love their back catalog, like it's almost like it's such, like, one is like an artistic, like Netflix is like the artistic platform, and Disney Plus is just like the junkyard of I just want to watch something that I know.
It's the quantity. Like, there's a lot of good stuff on Disney Plus, but not the original stuff. Like,
But I also appreciate how much money Netflix gives to international creators. That's like one of my favorite things about them, and I think they're the only streaming service that has as many international and other language options, which is probably why we got so much amazing new stuff. Because, like, obviously in America and Canada, I'm sure we could still produce like millions of things a year, but half of them are the same old rom-coms as we mentioned, or whatever the fuck.
Exactly.
Absolutely. The more opportunity you give for international film, the more like the higher chance you have to have something well made, right?
I mean, look at Squid Games, which I still haven't seen, unfortunately, but like that show was apparently incredible and took over the world. So.
And like I've talked about Dark on this show, and obviously writing wise that didn't end up, it kind of lost control, but that is still an extremely well produced Netflix original. Like that is, it was made with care for sure. Oh, and that was German, that's why I brought it up.
I also appreciate how it made people okay with subtitles, I think. Because I feel like back in the day, if ever there was a film that had subtitles in theaters, God forbid, like, no one would have watched it. They would have been like, nope, I can't read.
Yeah.
But now it's kind of the norm because everyone's multitasking even while watching things in their native language. So they have subtitles on anyway. So now if there is something in a foreign language, they're more willing to just stare at a screen and read it and figure it out.
When we were watching The Batman yesterday, we discovered an entire hilarious thing that was only like hearable in subtitles.
Really?
It's just like a background conversation that we didn't notice but only realized because the subtitles picked it up.
So
we won't go into
okay, sure, fuck it, we can cut it if it goes too long. But basically, like, when Bruce, after Alfred blows up and Bruce goes to see Falcone to be like, did you kill my parents or whatever, as he's like walking in, as he's being let in, Falcone is there with his men having a conversation. And
they're playing pool.
Playing pool, and the conversation that you don't really hear, you can only catch on subtitles, is Falcone says, like, who invented the ball? They must have made a lot of money. And it was like, but then he said like two other really funny things that made completely, like, it was just like he was saying random things, and we were like, what the shit is this?
It was like the director told him to like have a conversation.
Yeah, just ad-lib a dumb conversation. It was really good.
I'm glad they kept it in, though.
Me too. It was a good joke, yeah.
Should we go back to saying some general good things about this movie now?
Yeah, who wants to go next? Carol, you, I feel like, have not said a good thing yet.
You've not said a good thing.
Everyone has to say a good thing.
I have a probably me specific pro, so I'll say it so I don't take a pro from anyone else, because I know they're probably kind of limited. I really liked the dance that like the clones did in the high school.
Okay.
The choreography was stunning. And the dancers were so talented. It was a joy to watch. A little bit less so when people started like being stabbed, but that initial just couple dancing, gorgeous. I could watch that all day.
There's so much about this movie that like in a vacuum was well done. Like pretty much everything about this movie is extremely well shot, and the performances are absolutely, there's no problem there. Yeah. It's just like how it all fits together as a larger whole. So yeah, I'll second that. Like the dance sequence itself was well choreographed and it looked really good. I just didn't know what the fuck was going on.
Yeah.
Well, you have to be very familiar with Oklahoma.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. Yeah, like if you have no idea what that is,
it means nothing.
You get nothing out of it. It's just a nice dance sequence. But anyway, one good thing I have one thing I liked is that this film used a technique that I've never really seen before, where so there's narration throughout most of the film, and a lot of the times the narration will be interrupted by dialogue.
Yes.
It's kind of just a minor sound design thing, but I like that there's a way of characters interrupting what's going on inside other characters' heads.
Yeah, it was cool because it reminded me of, like in a Sorkin movie when characters are talking over each other type thing, but
out loud.
Yeah, they're doing it out loud, but in this, it was like the narration was being cut, which also like, I think to your point, like the movie, in terms of feeling a little bit isolating, feeling a little bit stuck, it's like the characters are trying to go into their own space, but they can't because they're being interrupted by the outside world, which feels very real to what that feels like too when you're trying to just disassociate from the world around you, but you can't because things keep coming up. So yeah,
it's like even your own headspace isn't safe.
Yeah.
And there's even, I think, a couple times in the movie when Jesse Plemons, like, Jessie Buckley is, like, the main character. She's doing her narration, and Jesse Plemons is like, what? Or, like, what are you thinking right now? As if he can literally hear what's going on in her head, which is kind of, that's uncomfortable.
It kind of reminded me of Fleabag, like when she would look to camera and the priest would be like, why do you keep doing that?
Notice?
I mean, obviously that is a million times better, but, like, the same idea of, like, that
also makes more sense because it's visual rather than just thoughts in someone's head. But it's same idea,
I found all of that really effective until the end, and you found out why that happened. I really hated the end, I think that's what ruined it.
Wait, you find out why? What happened?
Well, because all of this is happening in the janitor's head.
Yeah.
As I said. So, like, none of these people are real.
Yeah,
they're all, that's why everyone can hear everyone's thoughts, seemingly, because they are all hearing each other's thoughts, because they're all his thoughts.
Okay, that's news to me. We'll talk about, like, what actually happened in this movie.
Okay, yeah, I did a lot of research after I initially watched the movie, and then redid all the research this time, but yeah. I can explain it all to you, Dan, don't worry.
I would love that, because I just want to grasp onto, like, what...
See, but I don't want to ruin it for you, because it's almost, like, better if you just think the way you're thinking. It all sounds so good that way. When I explain it away, it's worse. It's so much worse.
Trust me, it'll be better. I just need an explanation for what I saw. We can wait on that, though.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But to your point, Carol, I actually, like, I hear what you're saying, but I also think that makes me...
You hear what she's saying?
I hear what you're saying. I also think that makes me... like it a little bit more though, but like we can wait until we get to the conversation about it, and I'll explain why I think that makes me like it. But another positive I had, very specific. This means nothing to no one but me. But there is one shot in this that reminded me a lot of a shot from Taxi Driver, and I'm just gonna try to explain the shot because I don't know what else to do. But in Taxi Driver, there's a scene where he's like at the edge of a hallway having like an uncomfortable conversation on a payphone. When I say he, I mean Robert De Niro, the taxi driver. And, like, right next to him is, like, this very long hallway, but he's, like, at the wall before going down the very long hallway. Anyway, the camera's on him, and, like, halfway through the conversation, the camera just dollies over and just looks down the long hallway. And, like, you don't see him on screen, but you still hear the entire second half of the conversation. And then he walks into the shot of the long hallway and walks away. And it just always stood out to me as a really weird, specific shot. Like, why are we dollying away from the conversation and then waiting for him to come back into frame? And, like, I've watched a lot of YouTube videos about it, and people explained it as, like, it's almost like you, the viewer, are supposed to feel so pathetic for him that, like, you don't even want to be seeing what's happening. Like, you're trying to look away, but you can't. Anyway, I just thought it was always an effective shot in that movie. And there is a shot in this that is just like that, where Jesse Plemons and the other Jesse are talking in a room, and the camera dollies over to the living room, to the couch, and you just hear their conversation, and then they walk into the living room. And I was like, oh, it's a Taxi Driver shot. So, like, I like that shot.
Yes. I also did like that shot. I didn't know that was a Taxi Driver thing.
I don't know if it's a reference to Taxi Driver, but I just
wouldn't
know...
put it past the film to have another reference to something.
Yeah, like, as soon as I saw it, I was like, that's just like that shot I've seen before. But regardless, I think it's a nice shot, like you said. So.
Yeah, and even, like, I didn't have that context, so I guess this is one of the things that actually did work without the outside context, at least for me, because it was just nice. Like, it was almost like they were introducing the room before the subjects actually walked into it.
Yeah, it's cool.
And I don't really know how to read the subtext of that, because there's a lot about this movie that I don't really know how to read on, but it's just not, like, it was a cool technique,
exactly,
if nothing else. So,
and yeah, sort of like, I guess that goes to show, like, in Taxi Driver, because you understand the text of the scene, you can, like, pick up subtext, but in this, because we don't know what the text of the scene is, like, what does the subtext mean? Who fucking knows? Because we don't even know the bare bones of, like, But anyway, nice technique, nice shot.
Sure, it's like what you said, Carol, of how you like the look of the dance scene. Like, I like how it looked aesthetic. I also just like, the set dressing of the house as a set, and we spend a lot of time in a car in this movie,
which film,
it's very slow, but at least like I don't know, they actually I like kind of like what they did with atmospheric sound when they're cutting in and out of the car.
Yeah,
they kind of seemingly randomly, but I'm sure purposefully choose when to use the inside ambient sound and the outside blizzard ambient sound when you're viewing them like through a window or not. So that was interesting. It kind of shook it up a little bit rather than just two people in a car having like an extremely long conversation with the ambience of sitting in a car.
Yeah, exactly. But just before one of you jump on your next point, since we're talking about sort of like the whole car and stuff and the atmospherics, I know we've touched on this before, but I just love seeing snow. As a Canadian, like whenever something takes place in the snow, I'm like, that's snow.
Nice.
It is beautiful.
And like what it is beautiful, like especially when you don't have to be cold and experiencing it. So like just to see it while I was sitting at home with the windows open because it was a nice day, I was like, snow. Actually, it snowed yesterday. Yeah, that's right. It fucking snowed. For some reason in mid-April it snowed because Windsor.
Yep.
Anyway.
April 18th.
Yeah.
It's
Wonderful. Fucking Canada.
And not just a little bit. Like, it was coming down. I had to clean off my car.
Yeah, it collected. Yeah. Anyway, snow. Positive snow for me.
Yeah, like, I mean, I see what you're saying. Like, when you don't actually have to experience it yourself, snow is a very nice... And when it's not like the snow that's been there for a few days that, like, tires have driven through. It's just, like, pure fluffy snow.
It's beautiful movie snow.
Yeah.
It's also a nice background noise, I guess.
For sure.
Visually.
For sure.
I will say... Because going into this, once again, as I alluded to in my intro, I was expecting some kind of mind-bending psychological thriller. I will say, before I knew what was going on in the film, it did do a very good job at making me feel unsettled in many different moments and shots. A lot of the stuff with the basement I did find really effective in conveying that sort of sense of unease and fear that Jessie Buckley was supposed to be experiencing. And that whole sequence at the ice cream place was like, a lot of my issues with this film are like how overly bizarre it was. Like, I think a lot of it was just kind of out of my wheelhouse, but I did really like the bizarreness of that ice cream scene a lot.
I have another thing, but also one of the things on my list was pretty much that too, is just how effective it was at conveying that feeling, and just her constant asking to be brought home when Jesse Plemons just keeps finding an excuse not to. Yeah. I also laughed a lot at Jesse Plemons' performance in this. Not that it was a bad performance, but just it's like that thing.
It's pathetic. Like, it's
pathetic, and also that thing of like someone. You've brought this up before, of someone freaking out disproportionately for the situation.
Yes,
There's a lot of that in this movie, and I laughed quite a few times.
That is maybe my favorite not intentional thing that makes me laugh in movies, is when someone freaks out of nowhere.
It caught me off guard every time in this film. I was like, oh, okay, all right, go off.
Another thing that I want to bring up is the score, though. I did actually really like the score of this movie. I don't know how much of it was original or like how much was maybe like from something else, like a reference, or from even Oklahoma, because that play has like a big role in the plot of this movie apparently, and that's obviously a musical. So like I don't know what I was hearing was original score and what wasn't, but I'll just say in general I liked the musical choices in this movie, and
nice.
whatever of it was score was also well done.
Okay, I have one more positive.
While you're looking that up, I'll also add my last two were just very general, and I've kind of mentioned them already. It's just the cinematography and performances are well done.
Yeah,
I was also going to give a shout out to the performances.
Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things too, where it's like, anytime Toni Collette's in a movie, like she's incredible and kills it. Like, you seeing her pop up, I was like, oh, nice. So like, this is gonna be cool. Same with Jesse Plemons and Remus from Harry Potter. David whatever, like
David Thewlis.
Yeah, he's
good.
I've
never seen Jessie Buckley in anything, but she was also really good.
Yeah, she's
great.
great.
You've never seen her in anything? I feel like
What's she been
really
in, Carol?
Popping up. The Lost Daughters, what I saw her in most recently, and a new horror film is coming out that she's starring in called Men. And I'm so excited.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that movie.
Exciting. Okay.
Oh, that's by I think that's by the director of Ex Machina.
Yes.
No shit.
Yeah.
So the guy that did Annihilation too, right?
And Annihilation, yeah. So that should be really good.
Okay, I'm excited. That's exciting. Nice. My last point here is actually a moment of dialogue that I kind of liked because it kind of touched on, I think, the themes I was saying earlier about how I'm happy this movie exists just because it's a different type of art. And it actually goes to your guys' points as well about how the movie is really good at conveying sort of like dread and emotion, even if you don't know what the fuck's going on. And when she's talking to his parents about like her photography, and like, or not photography, sorry, her like art and the type of art she does, and she's saying how she like takes, or she like tries to capture like the emotion through landscapes or whatever, and like the dad says specifically, why not take a photograph if you like photographs? But like what she's trying to get across, or sorry, other way around. She says that to the dad, where the dad's like, oh, like I like things that look real or whatever, and she says like, why not take a photograph if you like photographs? And I thought that was very insightful in terms of like what Charlie Kaufman is trying to accomplish with this movie, I think, which is like to not create something that's real, but to create something that like gives you a certain sense of emotion and feeling without necessarily having real properties in it. And then the other thing I had from that dinner scene, when she shows the dad some of her artwork, he says they're pretty, but I'm not sure how they're supposed to make me feel. Something without a person in it, like how is that going to make me feel something or whatever. And I think that was also pretty insightful in terms of, again, like I think what he's trying to accomplish with this movie in terms of it doesn't literally have something for you to latch onto, but like it's still trying to convey an emotion, which is interesting. I don't think it works because this is a film, and like as much as I like to compare film to other art forms, at the end of the day, like there are certain rules for certain types of art forms, and you know, to make a film that is so desperately trying to be like an impressionistic piece of art, like it's not gonna work for most people. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting that he actually like put that little bit of dialogue in there that I think is supposed to underscore what he's trying to do with the movie. And even if it didn't entirely work for me, it did kind of give me some context to go like, oh, okay, like he did make this with intention. Like this isn't just trying to be deep. Like he really did like think about it and care about it. To your point, Dan, like this was a movie for him, almost like an experiment. Like I hesitate to call it like an experimental film because it's not really, but like to a certain degree, it's like, you know, can I convey an emotion without necessarily like this very literal aspect? Like just have the smallest touch of like a literal plane. So yeah, it doesn't really work, but at least I like that it was in the dialogue because it kind of backed up the themes of the movie. They addressed it, so good on you for addressing it and having kind of a nice scene about art.
And going back to what you said about you don't think that he is just trying to be deep, like you think he actually understands what he's doing.
Yeah.
I also second that. He's not just like, again, to compare him to Darren Aronofsky,
yeah.
where, and I mean, not to just jokingly keep shitting on this guy, but he genuinely seems like someone who doesn't understand what he's doing but wants to.
Yeah.
This is not that. Like, Charlie Kaufman is clearly proven to be a very good filmmaker and understands the rules of filmmaking, the history of filmmaking. Even like, okay, you guys know at the beginning of this movie, I don't remember if this was a production logo or just something at the beginning of the movie, but there was a small clip of a guy. Yes. It's black and white.
I remember. And
he's got like this black lipstick on, and there's like 3 shots. There's the shot of this guy, and then a shot after it, and then back to him, and then a different shot after him, and then back to him one more time, and a different shot once again.
Okay.
That is a very old fundamental, like this is like back in the early history of cinema. It's called associative montage editing, and this is when filmmakers discovered the power of the shot that comes after or precedes a shot, and how any shot in a movie, in an ideal movie where every shot matters, the shots before and after completely inform the shots like next to it. So like every shot is in like interdependent in what comes before and after it. So like whether that was a logo or actually part of his movie, I think that either this movie was supported by a production house because it is so true to the fundamentals of cinema history, or whether like maybe he chose to include that. I just can't remember. Either way, I think this movie, whether or not we like it or not, it continues to prove that Charlie Kaufman has true integrity in his work and is not just being a pretentious filmmaker for the sake of being a pretentious filmmaker. So.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, like, as much as I dislike this, and we're about to get fully into that, like, I don't, on both viewings, I don't know if I necessarily even complain about this feeling like a pretentious film as much as I complain about other films feeling pretentious. And I think the difference for me is kind of what you touched on. I feel like if I sat down with Charlie Kaufman, I could ask him about any individual thing in this movie and I would get a full explanation as to his entire thought process. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think when I think of a pretentious filmmaker, I'm thinking about someone that if I asked them, they'd be like, whatever you think, man. I don't know. You tell me. Like, and that to me is like the height of pretentiousness in film, of like, you can't just put random shit in there and ask other people to figure it out. Like, Charlie clearly has intent and knows exactly what he's doing. And I think that's why a lot of these techniques work, even though the overall piece didn't necessarily work for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that's true, but in doing my research, there were a lot of articles that were, like, explaining this directly. Like, even in some cases, the people writing up the articles were asking him questions directly and then recording his answers. And he said that he hates to talk about his films or interpret them for people or say what they're supposed to take away from it, which, fair, you should never do that because no one's going to agree with you anyway. And it is good that he did answer those questions for this film because I think they were very, very necessary.
And I also think, like, I totally get when artists, and I really appreciate, because you look at someone like JK Asshole, who has, like, interpreted her work so much that it's borderline, like, hard to even enjoy it anymore because she's just added so many layers of bullshit to it. And I really appreciate, like,
But wait, don't you want to know, like, what wizards did before the invention of toilets?
No. And I also don't really care about the intricacies of Dumbledore's sex life either, to be honest with you. But anyway, like, the fucking... Like, I think about, this is such a random pull, but John Green, the author John Green, who has TikTok, and someone on TikTok, like, had asked him a question, and he made a whole TikTok in response where he was basically like, I don't like talking about my work, not because I don't have the answers, but because if it resonates with you in a certain way, I don't want to take that away from you, because once you put a piece of art in the world, like, yeah, it's going to be interpreted, and people are going to have their own attachments to it in different ways, right? And I think that's completely fair. But I think as a creator, like, you should still have your interpretation and attachment to it. And if you don't, like, if you're just leaving it to the audience, like, that's when you end up with something that resonates with no one, because there's no intent behind it whatsoever. Like, I always think about even, like, the ending to Inception, where, like, Nolan very specifically is like, what this shot means to me is that it doesn't matter anymore whether or not he's in a dream. Like, that's my intent. But, like, there are so many fans one way or another that are like, what about this theory or this theory? And it's like, yeah, whatever. Like, you are totally allowed to have that interpretation, but the filmmaker also had a vision when putting it together, and it doesn't take away from that. As opposed to a Darren who just throws shit on the screen.
Makes a choose-your-own-adventure.
Makes a choose-your-own-adventure movie.
Yeah, basically what you're saying is, like, it's cool to have multiple interpretations as long as there is an interpretation at all.
Yes.
That is very crucial.
Yes, something can't come from nothing. So, like, you have to have infused it with something, and then the rest of us can try and pull from that what we wish.
And that's why I kind of wish, because this is based on a novel, I wish I had read the novel prior to recording this episode, because in my research, it says that the climax of the film marks a huge shift from the psychological thriller twist of Reed's book, which took a more literal-minded turn to explain the moments leading up to the climax. But instead, apparently, Kaufman bathed the whole movie in ambiguous signifiers, right down to the final scene.
See, this movie reminds me a lot, for better or for worse, of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Because that book is a very literal sci-fi adventure that Stanley Kubrick then made into a weird choose-your-own-adventure ending of, like, what the fuck is happening, and you just have to, like, piece it together.
I didn't know that was a book.
Yeah, it was an Arthur C. Clarke novel. But yeah, it very much has the same vibes. But also, like, to touch on kind of like that and adaptation, I also don't mind the idea that a lot of times when adapting something, maybe you're trying to adapt the feeling of the thing as opposed to the literal aspects of the thing. I think that's totally fair. It's a perfectly good way to go about adapting something, especially something that's maybe a little bit light on story, where you're kind of like, why would you even adapt this? And then, like 2001, to be fair, like, I never read it, my dad read it, but I remember him saying, like, it's a perfectly fine sci-fi novel, but the reason that the movie has had such longevity is because it, like, Kubrick went out of his way to capture the feeling rather than the literal plot, which is fair. Not the type of thing I'm into, but I understand going about doing it that way. We even talked about in Interstellar how Nolan just gave Hans Zimmer the themes of the movie instead of a script, and like Zimmer just wrote music to the themes of the movie. So like that is totally cool and can work for art and adaptation and yada yada yada. But yeah, it didn't work in this for me. But I appreciate the fact that at least an attempt was made to not just be like, here's another straight to Netflix adaptation of a cheap book that nobody's ever fucking read.
Yeah, and like, it came out very recently, like 2016.
Yeah.
So it could have easily just been, like a quick cash grab on a semi-successful novel. I also found that interesting to find out that when I found out this was based on a book, and that the book was very much, like, very different and much more literal, and that decision to just take that and just take the essence of it and turn it into a movie. Now, I think there are better ways to do that than making a movie adaptation. Like, he could have, for example, he's not a painter, I don't think, but someone could have made like a painting about the theme of what the novel conveys, or like some sort of visual art, or a song, or even like another book adaptation,
a concept album,
like,
something like that. Album. Yeah.
Sure. I just don't think a movie where you very much need like literal plot and characters to drive the thing forward is the best choice for that. But either way, it is interesting that he chose to make an adaptation just like plucking the theme of the original thing and nothing else, basically. I think this film needs a strategy guide. Like, you know how
like a video game?
A lot of video games come with a strategy guide.
Here's how to get all the achievements.
Here's how to get all the nuggets of information possible from this movie.
Here's how to platinum. I'm thinking about ending things.
Okay, so can we get into the actual meaning of the story behind this now?
Yes. So essentially what it is, and the reason it even is filmed the way it is, because we get interstitial shots of what the janitor is doing and seeing from almost like pretty early on in the film.
Right at the start.
Yeah, and that is because all of this is happening in the janitor's head as he is nearing the end of his life. Now, unfortunately, I don't have all the answers for you because I don't exactly know why he's nearing the end of his life. Like, I think it's all hypothermia in the end, and we're supposed to assume that all of the memories and thoughts that we're getting, so like the direct memories of him like watching high school plays and stuff, and then all of the like taking this girl home to see his parents is more of like a dream, I guess, a pre-death dream. I'm unsure of the timeline of it all, but yeah, essentially everything that is happening is just in this one janitor's head right before he dies, and that's why we get kind of like the parents at all the different random ages, and why we have characters like Jessie Buckley's character going off and saying these entire like critiques that are like straight from a book because it's something that he had read before, and why in the end we see Jesse Plemons doing that speech that's directly from, what's the movie?
A Beautiful Mind.
Yes.
I think.
Beautiful Mind, and things like that. So kind of everything is referenced earlier, and like the reason he knows about all of these musicals, like Oklahoma, like earlier in the car at some point he says like they perform a lot of musicals. He's talking about the high school kids at the high school that he cleans, and that's why he knows everything. There's a lot of other little hints to it, like at some point when he offers her his slippers, which the janitor also does when they like meet. But when he offers her slippers, he says it in like Spanish, and like on a blackboard in one of the rooms the janitor is cleaning, you see the Spanish word for slippers. Like, it's just kind of hints like that show you. And so Jesse Plemons is the younger version of the janitor in his mind, and Jessie Buckley is not even a real person that he's ever known. It's kind of an amalgamation of like the perfect girl in his head. Mm-hmm. And then his parents are also his real parents, but just through various points in his life. That's kind of it. It's just his brain.
See, so, and some of that, like, after having that realization, it did make me like some of the more surreal stuff in this movie a little bit more.
Yeah.
I still needed there to be more of a literal plot happening. But, like, a lot of the technique and stuff I really like, because do either of you guys maladaptive daydream at all?
What is that?
Do either of you know? Okay, it's basically just when you, like, zone out and, like, think about the future and, like, plan the future in terms of, like imagine yourself in scenarios in the future type thing, and like what you would do.
Constantly.
Okay, me too. I
didn't know that's what it was called.
Yeah, it's called maladaptive. Apparently, it's a psychological disorder that we all have. So, but
I'll add it to the list.
Everyone does that.
I thought it was common too. Okay, also, since we're talking about things that not all people do you guys have like inner monologue? Like,
yeah.
Carol? Okay.
But
no, not often.
But it happens sometimes. Like, I feel like everyone at some point hears their own voice inside their head.
Some people apparently don't.
I talk about this with my friends all the time, and it's very fascinating because I never pay attention to it. The only time I notice is if I have a song stuck in my head, and then sometimes it'll be like me singing the song in my head. You know what I mean? But I don't often hear my own voice narrating like actual thoughts in my head, like my own thoughts.
See, that's interesting. Because I do, and I also, like, talk to myself a lot. We don't have to...
I do that more
too.
so. Like, out loud talking than out in my head talking. Yeah.
I also sometimes, if I'm alone, I'll talk a little bit out loud.
I do it everywhere all the time.
I feel like sometimes I'll be having a conversation in my head, and then I'll just, like, say something out loud. Like, I'll respond to something going on.
It's when you had an inside joke with yourself. I will never forget.
Yes! From the Marco Hood. There was this one time the Marco Hood was hanging out.
The Marco Hood.
And Marco just bursts out laughing.
We were hanging out, and I was in the backseat of the car, and I started laughing, and they were like, "What's so funny?"
Like,
and I was
laughing very hard.
Very inside.
Here's why I bring this all up. Like, as someone that does that, I very much get stuck in... Or not get stuck, but, like, do you guys ever, like... It's almost like if you're fantasizing about something, like, you'll cut yourself off, or, like, you'll, like, rewrite parts of the story
all the time
or whatever. So that's the stuff that I really enjoyed about this once it was revealed that it was all in his head, was how like the girlfriend's name keeps changing, or what she's studying keeps changing because he's constantly rewriting that part of the story for himself, or like how his parents are at various ages or whatever. Like, that stuff I thought was really cool. And also, Carol, like to what Dan had said earlier about like having the characters cut each other off through the narration. That was also made stronger for me because there are so many times where I feel like I'm trying to be in my own head about something, and then something from the outside world like stimulates me to where I have to like stop being in my own head and I have to deal with something first. And so that felt almost a little bit like that as well, where like he's trying to he like his inner monologue is him like trying to process something, but then like something literally happens, and I don't know. So I just thought a lot of those techniques felt very real to me about stuff that I've even just experienced, just having that like daydreaming and fantasizing about like a better life or whatever, and like the constant rewriting of what you would want your life to be. So I that stuff did work. Unfortunately, there was just nothing literally happening, but as a technique, it worked.
See, and that's why I liked it less when I found out what was really happening, because I liked how eerie it felt to have this like man almost reading this woman's thoughts, and then when it was revealed it was all in his head, I was like, oh, so there was nothing to it other than him literally having a conversation with himself. And so like now upon a rewatch, it takes away that eerie feeling for me. Like, it's not like creepy anymore or even interesting. It's just like, oh yeah, it's just this guy's like, I do that all the time. It's not interesting to me anymore.
Right.
and that means there's literally no stakes anymore.
Yeah.
What little stakes there might have been are now gone.
Like it was.
I do have a new question then.
The thing is, like, a rewatch now gave me fun opportunity to find like all the like nuggets, like all the references of like, oh, the book she's reciting something from, I now see it on his shelf, or I see this DVD on his shelf, like that now makes it fun upon rewatch. But I find that it takes away a lot of other things. But what's your question?
It loses the thriller aspect a little bit,
which was what I thought it was going to
mystery.
be going into it, and which really upset me that it wasn't when the reveal comes at the end.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So it's maybe my fault that I hate this movie. I was just expecting something totally different.
It's fair.
It's so bizarre because like we're saying there's a lot of good stuff to be said about this movie, and yet I still wouldn't recommend it to anyone to watch. Like as a viewing experience.
Which is so weird.
It's kind of sad that it's all wasted on this movie that doesn't have anything driving it forward, but there's so much that actually kind of does work about it.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
It's a shame because I think it would be cool to have a movie about someone daydreaming or whatever and to employ a lot of those techniques, but it's just like it's in the service of nothing. Like it's cool that those techniques are there, but like
and like we said, it's not even in the service of something offensive, it's just in the service of nothing.
Of nothing. Of literally nothing.
Not really anything going on. I do have a new question though, after hearing what actually happened in this movie. This movie is presented as the experience of a woman who's like uncomfortable in this situation. It could be it's like a reference to if you're uncomfortable on a date or just any situation in general, right? So how come if this is all in his head, and I don't expect you to have like the answer to this because I don't expect any of us to, but like why is she the protagonist and why is she made to feel so uncomfortable? Like that's why what I thought was happening in this movie was similar to what you said. She is the amalgamation of a few different girlfriends that he had in his life, and like he was thinking back on how he made them uncomfortable in some way. And this was just a movie about him, like his retrospective of his dating history or something. That's kind of what I read about it. So why do you think that the movie chooses to focus on her and her like her discomfort rather than, if this is supposed to be a movie just focusing on someone imagining a scenario in their own head?
So, I mean, first of all, like you said, there's absolutely no actual answer.
No, I don't expect.
So
yeah,
but like I guess my take on it would be that I think he's supposed to be like a really pathetic character and person, and maybe this is just like the manifestation of his incredibly low like self-esteem or whatever you want to call it. Like the fact that like even in his daydreams about, and whether or not like maybe it is an amalgamation of people that he's known and he's like trying to rewrite and make it all make sense in his head, but at the same time, like, he just can't help but focus on the negative aspects of it because he is a clinically depressed person who needs help and has not had help and, like, is rewriting his own history in that way because that's what's going on in his mind right now. Would be, I guess, my only real take as to why to portray it that way.
So you're saying even in when he has full control over his imagination, this is still the direction he goes in because that's just the type of person that he is.
Well, I remember, like, and I haven't taken a psychology class since grade fucking 11, but I remember in that grade 11...
I've never taken one.
Well, there you go. I remember in that grade 11 psych class, we talked about, like, obviously the different stages of development and whatnot, and, like, the different ways you can approach those stages of development, and I remember something about how, like, when you're at the end of your life, there's, like, you can either be in, like, the... like content stage or the whatever the other stage is. I forget what it's called, but it's basically the idea that discontent, I guess. We'll call it that. I don't think that's actually what it was called, but sure. But basically the idea that like once you get to a certain age in your development, and you're sort of reflecting back on your life, you can either be like a relatively content person or someone that like is just full of regret and sad or whatever based on the way you've lived your life. And I kind of get the sense that maybe this is his way of showing that for this protagonist character, that like he is just so filled with like regret and shame and whatever about his past life that even in his fantasies and even in his trying to rewrite those moments, he can't help but avoid that, where like it's almost like he's
too far gone.
It's like that's why maybe he keeps changing the scenario. It's because it's like I'm trying to get to a point where I won't feel that way, but like somehow there's always something lingering there of like I'm fucking up in like everything. I don't know.
Okay.
That's my take.
I also have a contextless note that informs my opinion.
The whole movie is contextless. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I haven't actually seen A Beautiful Mind. Is it about a paranoid schizophrenic, perhaps?
Have you seen it?
I haven't, but I know the twist. So
Okay. I haven't seen it.
Okay, so never mind.
Wait, I can explain the twist then if nobody's seen it.
It?
Yeah, like he is like... There's basically someone that he thinks is like his best friend, but it turns out this person doesn't exist. Like,
okay, cool.
It's someone that only exists in his mind.
Okay.
Is the twist. Sorry.
Like,
That's fine. We already spoiled this whole movie too. But anyway, yeah, what I was going to say is because he seems to be so attached to A Beautiful Mind, which is about a paranoid schizophrenic, it seems interesting that he relates to this. So I think, similar to what Marco said, he might have some like mental disorder that he hasn't actually dealt with, and so that's why his final moments are so fraught with this other entity, in this case this woman, who seems to be like disagreeing with everything he says and like doesn't like him because it is kind of that side of himself that questions everything that he does and doubts himself and doesn't like himself. And wants to end things with himself, which he then does in the cold of his car and gets naked and follows a pig into high school. Although I don't think he ever actually went back into the high school. He just died in that car, but, whatever.
Yeah, that was clearly in his... Because that's when we get the dance sequence, right? And that's kind of like the last... Him battling with himself. Yeah. That was probably one of the last things he would have thought about before he died.
Well, I think it was dance sequence and then car and then speech. I think that was the last thing. His speech to the... He did a speech in a song.
Oh, that, yeah. Right.
To the
Jesse
like crowd
Plemons,
of people. Yeah. In like old person makeup.
True, there was that.
Yeah. Which like faded to blue, which made me think of the end to that Planet of the Apes movie I haven't seen, where you said it just faded to white when the nuke went off. I thought it made me laugh. It also very much gave me BoJack Horseman vibes in that episode where he's in the pool and everyone's like all of his like dead friends and family are doing their performances like in the last season.
Yeah,
it kind obviously episode, like that was a very, very, very good piece of media, and this, a bit less so, but it gave me the same vibe.
Yeah,
should just have like one final performance before death. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it kind
before
of
entering
the
void, right? Void.
Yeah,
void.
but one was good.
Yeah, I think that they were the same year too, right?
Yeah, 2016. No,
like ending. It ended in 2020, right?
BoJack?
Yeah. Did it not?
I think it ended in early 2020. Like
this came out in 2020.
Like January 2020. Yeah.
Whoa.
Nice. Anyway, this is all interesting. I think I'm glad that I heard these interpretations because it actually does make a lot more sense now.
Yeah.
It really helps. Like I needed that help to understand it. So it's not like the movie still didn't do a very good job of conveying that. But whether these are true or not, like I at least have something to grasp onto plot wise now. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm glad because Carol, you were saying I might not actually want to hear what actually happens because it might ruin it. For me.
Yeah, it takes away from a lot, but like it is overall necessary to watch the movie.
I'm glad that I
heard
it because it helped.
Yeah,
yeah. I have lots of complaints to bring to the table here.
Okay,
me too.
Okay, so anyone who likes this movie, I mean, you got a lot of content out of us being nice. It's time. Mm-hmm. Okay, step one. This movie starts with lowercase white text over black, and the font is incredibly small.
It's so small. Even the end credits. What the fuck is that? I couldn't read a thing. I'm so blind.
I was so turned off by that film school bullshit when that started.
Also,
I was like,
apparently
fuck this.
The end credits have a lot of important information as to all the references that were made in the film. It's like, then why are you showing us an 8-point font?
When it
at the end,
there's a list of what they used.
I don't know if there was like an actual list or any. I couldn't read it, and I just didn't try.
Yeah. It's just like in credits when you credit archive footage or special thanks to whatever.
I don't know. I couldn't read it. I saw that it was the same font from the beginning, and immediately pressed power, turned my TV off. It's too small. I'm so blind. I already have a pretty small TV. I'm like pretty far away from it if I'm watching in bed. There was just no fucking way. So
I also found that very annoying. One thing I did like though, I know we're officially in complaint territory, but because speaking of the credits, I like how the end credits look, how they blurred. Like first of all, the credits appear on a nice shot of like the snowy landscape and whatever, and then it blurs and this white text comes on.
You mean the snowy car where the man died?
Yeah, but you can't see that because it's covered in snow.
Yeah.
If the text was bigger, I would have liked how it looked.
Yes, I agree. I think we talked about this in the Wind River episode, how like when the last shot can nicely lead into credits or something. I think that concept came up.
Because they had the text that came up with statistics? Yeah.
Yes. I think we talked about it there. Yeah, I agree. I think if the font was bigger and maybe also wasn't all lowercase, it would not be as frustrating.
Yeah, I also hate that, especially in like music when people name their tracks without capitalizing the first letter because it's like an artistic choice.
I hate that. I absolutely hate it. From the first second of this movie, I was turned off. I
really hate that they talked about that Christmas song, Baby It's Cold Outside, because just in general...
this is one of my points! Thank you!
Yeah, because just in general, the whole argument around the context and, like, rape culture-ness of that song already pisses me off. And the fact that, like, he then had that fight with himself made me extra angry. I don't know. I was just so annoyed. But also just the fact that even in this part of his brain, he thought to use Baby It's Cold Outside as a pickup line. I don't know. Dumb. All of it, dumb.
My last note was just like, I'm so sick of the discourse around Baby It's Cold Outside. Like, I literally never need to hear another.
It makes me so
like,
angry.
Why? Like, it makes me so mad because I can't. I can't. Like, shut up.
Yeah.
Stop talking about it. That's it. That's all I have to say.
I just think of Elf when I think of that song.
Me too. But like that song...
I just think of a very catchy Christmas song and a wonderful duet.
But also, do they not understand... Like, I feel like the discourse around that song is only perpetrated by people that have never been in a relationship.
Yeah.
Because, like, I don't know how you could not... Like, I don't know how you could miss the context of it being a mutually flirty song.
Yeah.
Like, I understand that if you were just reading the lyrics on a piece of paper
and given like today's context, if it was like written in 2020 and you're reading like what did he put in her drink, like sure, fucked.
Yes. But also, like, yeah, when you just listen to the song, it is so very clear that it's, like, a joke. Like, it's a flirty joke between a couple.
Like, they both want to bang. That is very clear.
They both want to bang. I'm so sick of people fucking talking about
this. Like, I do understand. We love consent. We love enthusiastic consent.
Yes.
Like, yes. We are so for that. But also, this song was written in the 30s. Basically, a woman could never admit she wanted sex, period. Yes. And that's the world it was written in, and, like, just stop talking about it. Just...
I know. It's ridiculous.
It's catchy. Let it live.
It's also... It reminds me so much of this, like, second or maybe third episode of The West Wing. Because in that show, basically, you guys know Dule Hill, the actor from Psych?
No.
Okay. Anyway, doesn't matter. But he had joined the show to be... basically, the president always has, like, a presidential aide who's, like, a young college kid who just, like, hangs out with him and helps him with stuff, like, kind of like Terry in Batman Beyond. Like, he's just, like, his helper. Like, he'll go fetch stuff for him or whatever.
Like the tall guy in Veep.
Yes. Like the tall guy in Veep, who was on an episode of Community I just watched, and that made me very happy because he's very funny. Yeah.
Oh, are you talking about the guy who's in Arrested Development?
The pottery instructor from Community? I think that's the same guy from Arrested Development.
Who did he play in Arrested Development?
Are you talking about, what's his name? Like Tony Hale or something? Is that his name?
No. Okay. Totally different guy.
Never mind.
Tony Hale is great, and especially in Arrested Development, but... not the same guy.
Anyway, so I've
never seen Veep.
Veep is great. You should watch Veep. It's very funny. So in The West Wing, let's go back to The West Wing. Dule Hill, plays this young college guy that is going to be the presidential aide, except he is this younger black guy, okay? And so there's this whole episode where basically, like, the senior staff of the White House are kind of like, should we do this? Like, does it look bad that there's, like, a young black guy, like, waiting on the president? Like, does that look too much like slavery? And, like, that's this whole thing, and it basically just ends with, like, one of the higher ups being like, man, or maybe it's the president, I don't remember, but just being like, there are real like racism problems to solve in the world. Like, he can be the fucking presidential aide. Like, we need to stop.
And also,
this
if
is
you
ridiculous.
never hire a black person as the presidential aide for fear of it looking like slavery, it'll just continue to be a bunch of white people in power.
100%. Anyway, that reminds me so much of the discourse of Baby It's Cold Outside, where it's like, there's actual consent issues to talk about in the world. Maybe we can
don't
just let
talk about this almost 100-year-old song.
Yeah, exactly. I'm so glad you had that as a note, because I was furious when that came up.
It makes me really angry.
Yeah.
I have here, so this movie has the, quote, things seem to just happen problem, which is pretty much just to say there's nothing that the characters need to do to progress the plot, which is also to say there is a severe lack of plot in this movie. That's, I mean, above all else, that is the biggest problem for me. That, like, again, this movie is 2 hours and 14 minutes long, and there's nothing to pass the time. When you think about it, a movie is the contents of a movie. Like, a plot is to pass the time of the movie, and when there's nothing to do that, you're just sitting there watching a 2 hour 14-minute piece of media that means nothing to you. So that's the biggest thing on my list for sure.
And I think that also ties into something on my list, which is, like you said, just the pace, like the pacing. And it's funny because, like, a lot of the times we can attribute pacing to editing, because like a lot of pace can be dictated by what happens in the edit for a movie. But I feel like when you have a movie like this, where there is no plot and there is no narrative thrust, how can you even establish a pace? Because nothing, like you said, is happening. So, like,
it's like, when do you know when to end what you're doing right now and go on to the next thing, when they're pretty much both equally as insignificant? Exactly.
And because so much of like plot and narrative, it always starts from that idea of like what do the characters want, or what do they need to do, and then scenes ending up like built around that. So when you look at, like, if you watch YouTube videos about editors and like the way they go about editing and stuff, like, a lot of times it comes down to like, okay, like, maybe we can trim the little bit of fat off here, because really, like, everything you need from this scene from a plot perspective happens here. Maybe we can move these things around, or like, this theme is better portrayed in that, whatever. In this, it's like, because it's all just nonsense,
it's all fat.
It's all fat. Like, there is nowhere to trim to get to the meat. Sorry for all the vegans out there, but like, it's all fat. And
there's no, you don't know where to trim the leaves of your celery to get the bad parts off, because it's all just like,
all parts of celery are bad. That's a horrible example. I mean, it's actually a perfect example.
Yeah. Wait, what do you mean all parts of celery are bad?
I don't like celery.
I hate celery too.
You guys don't like celery? It's just,
fuck celery.
It's, how can you not like celery? It has no taste.
Yeah, exactly.
And the feeling of, and like stringiness, it's horrible.
Just put some peanut butter on it.
I think the stringiness is what gets me.
Peanut butter on celery is really good.
Just eat some peanut butter.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, but you need a vehicle to put the peanut butter
on,
really? Like, rather than just...
Oh, Dan. I've eaten peanut butter out of a bowl too many times.
Not even out of a bowl, straight out of the jar. Come on.
You want to know the most disgusting thing? In second year university, when I was like at the height of my depression, I would literally come home from...
That's a paradox, by the way.
Yeah.
The height of your depression.
True. Yeah, I would come home from... Remember that episode of Batman Beyond that was called Ascension? And like, didn't Angelo call it like the opposite of Ascension?
A sinking feeling.
Yeah, he called it a sinking feeling. Anyway, in second year, at the height of my sinking feeling, I would come home from school and just crack open a beer, and then I would take peanut butter and Nutella and mix it together in a bowl and just eat that.
I did that all the time. It's like a Reese's peanut butter cup, but on a spoon. It's so good.
It was my cure. It was like it was the only thing that made me happy for so long.
See, that's fine because you're like, you put it in a bowl, right?
No, I never put them in a bowl. I just did spoon in one tub, spoon in the other, straight to the mouth. It was awesome.
Interesting.
Okay,
but interesting.
That was maybe I was more depressed than you because I didn't even have the energy to grab the bowl.
No. My point is that I still live at home, so I'm sharing this jar of peanut butter with other people. So I'd have to put it into a bowl.
Fair.
So it's like I usually go with putting it on like saltines or or carrots even. I even like carrots with peanut butter.
Yeah, I would agree.
Interesting. I've never tried that.
It's pretty good because carrots have a little bit of a sweetness to it.
Yeah, like carrot cake. I get it.
Okay.
All right.
So what else do we hate, guys?
What were we even talking about when we went on to that tangent?
You were talking about depression.
Oh, we were talking about trimming the fat of a movie.
Oh, trimming the fat, yeah. So there is no way to edit this movie because nothing matters. So basically, good luck. Although the movie, I do think, ironically, has good editing. Like, it has good scene-to-scene or, like, shot-to-shot editing. But, like, pacing-wise, it just lacks any thrust, so...
Yeah, like, it's cleanly... The cuts themselves are cleanly edited. Yes. And, like, the sound design is fine. But, yeah, it's like, the shot length and inter-shot length, even, from shot to shot or just scene to scene, all that stuff, is where it's kind of... It would be troublesome to edit this because, like you said, like, there's no metric to go by.
There's no rule book. It's like, what matters? It all matters. Oh, okay.
Either it all matters or none of it does.
Exactly.
Because it's all on the same playing field.
Yeah.
You know what I hated in general, but did lead to me enjoying some other things? That whole scene in the middle where the janitor's watching a film. I hated how that cut to credits in the middle, but I did like how it allowed for then in his memory for him to switch out Jessie Buckley with the actress from the movie, or for him to like mix up how in his headcanon he was supposed to have met Jessie Buckley and kind of switch it up with what happened in the movie he had just watched. Like those parts of it were fun, especially when you found out that it was all in the janitor's head. But I think I hated that in the middle we just kind of watched a scene from this fake movie who they then attributed to the person who made the Polar Express randomly.
And Forrest Gump.
Oh.
And Back to the Future.
Well, Wikipedia only attributed him to the Polar Express.
His opus.
So.
Yeah, that's a shame because fuck that movie. But
wait, what's wrong with the Polar Express?
I think we talked about. I'm sorry, I think we talked about this.
Okay, I think we actually talked about it. Forget about it.
Yeah, go back and find that episode. But long story short,
we don't even know what
it's weird.
It was.
Yeah, it's just weird.
Sure.
It's also just, but okay. First of all, I did think it was obviously weird, the cut to credits, but when I saw it was Robert Zemeckis, that did make me chuckle because I was like, okay,
someone I know.
Yeah, like
something
that's
I
funny.
Can latch onto.
Exactly. I was like
it was placed in there just for a joke, apparently.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I was like, I'd rather not. You know,
I did laugh at it.
Just make the movie funnier in other ways.
Yeah.
I laughed at it not because it cut to his name, but because how fast it cut away from it. Yeah, like it cut it off immediately.
The only
they didn't want you to think the
enjoyment...
movie was over. They wanted you to keep watching because they knew already you probably wanted to turn it off. If you thought it was credits,
exactly.
you would have just...
Weird. Robert Zemeckis directed this movie?
Yeah, exactly. The only enjoyment I really got out of that was that it made me think of the movie Vice, which I don't...
Oh, yeah.
I don't particularly love. Like, I like Big Short way more from
Really?
Adam McKay, but...
I liked Vice a lot. It was fun.
I also liked it. I haven't seen Big Short, but...
Big Short's great. You should watch Big Short. Vice is pretty good. It just didn't like slap the way I wanted to slap for me, but it was solid. But anyway, yeah, in Vice there is the one part where it's like, and then everything ended great, and it just cuts to credits, and the credits roll for so long, showing the actual, and then it's like no psych, but like the commitment to that joke in that movie really made me laugh hard. I thought it was well done. So this made me think of that, but obviously there's no intrinsically good value to it happening in this movie necessarily, other than it was kind of funny. But
yeah.
Okay, I need to bring up something that I take real umbrage with, which is I'm so goddamn sick of people doing weird things with aspect ratios. Okay? It is 2022. Just make everything widescreen. We've done it. Make it widescreen, or if you're gonna do IMAX where it's like full because it's an IMAX screen, sweet. If you're Tom Cruise and you're gonna really film that well in a Mission Impossible movie, great. But like, stop. You know, everyone was doing 3D shit for a while, and thankfully nobody really does that post-converted 3D crap anymore. But now it's like fucking Zack Snyder's Justice League in 4:3. That movie Ghost or whatever, starring Casey Affleck in 4:3. This movie fucking switches over to 4:3 for some reason. Why? I'm so we are not living in the full screen era anymore. Like, I understand when we're watching old animated shit like in Batman Beyond or the Batman animated series, that shit was made in 4:3. So yes, preserve the ratio it was made in, because if you make that widescreen, it's gonna cut off shit. I get it. Like, old episodes of TV shows, old episodes of The Simpsons were made in 4:3.
It fucked up a lot of Gilmore Girls when they did that conversion.
It did. Yes.
A lot.
Which is shit, okay? So, like, I am totally for keeping the ratio the thing was in, but there is absolutely no need other than being a pretentious dick to shoot anything in 4:3. Like, tell me what difference it made to the impact of this movie that you switched to 4:3. Explain it to me.
Netflix really tried to get him to not do it because they thought that everyone would think their TVs were broken, which first of all is not what I think when I see something playing in 4:3. But okay, Netflix.
Yeah.
Okay, here's where I fall on aspect ratios.
Film
if you're gonna change, if you're gonna have different aspect ratios, I'm fine with that. But make it have make it have a purpose within your movie. Like you're switching.
Like Bo Burnham.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know what? There's a perfect example.
He did it right.
Or even if you're switching from like one realm, I guess, not even just like in the most literal sense, but if you're switching from one headspace in your character to another one, it could make it perfect sense to switch the aspect ratio to make you feel more claustrophobic or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I hate when it's just because it was shot on two different cameras, or there's absolutely no apparent reason why we're having this like very sudden change of framing. If it's going to happen, ideal, and I get it, like sometimes you have reshoots and you have to shoot on a different camera. In that case, though, I would hope that one of the aspect ratios is significantly less, and you could just maybe take the time to convert the one that's different to the other one. But in an ideal situation, aspect ratios should be used to convey some sort of feeling or change of feeling within the world of the movie and nothing else. In a perfect world, if you're not going to use aspect ratios, you would just have it all in the same one. Now, as for the use of 4:3 in general, I kind of like it, to be honest. I prefer, like, if I were to pick one or the other, I would go widescreen, of course. But I like when it's used well, the feeling that 4:3 can give you of, like, either a vintage feeling or, like I said, a claustrophobic feeling because you feel boxed in. Yeah. It's much more closer to a square framing. I really want to see The Lighthouse, because that apparently uses that.
That's what I was literally Googling right now, the aspect ratio of The Lighthouse, because I thought it was in 4:3, and I remember really enjoying that, because I saw it in theaters and everything, but I wasn't sure if I was remembering it correctly.
See, so...
But that I appreciated.
Let me amend.
Take it back,
Not take it back. I stand by it. But, like, that... I think is fine, because that movie's also shot in black and white, and it's supposed to elicit a feeling. Like, my issue is with, like, this or Zack Snyder's Justice League, where it's like...
Yeah, I don't think Justice League needed to be in 4:3.
It's like, it's just so... It just reeks to me of, like, you're, like a pick-me person. Like, you're just trying to stand out so fucking much for no reason. And, like, a perfect example of what you're talking about is a movie we're going to talk about next week, which is La La Land, opens with one aspect ratio and, like, this very old-school coloring and sound, and then, like, widens up.
I'm so excited.
Me
I already,
too.
Like, have chills just thinking about that film. I'm so stoked.
Me too. Anyway, my point is, I just remember watching that movie the first time and, like, seeing that aspect ratio change along with the coloring and the sound, and I was like, wow, like, what a really effective way to, like, pull you into the movie. Great. I don't know why this movie switches to 4:3.
No, I don't either. There's no apparent
because it's not even at times that make sense. It's not specifically when they change setting.
Yeah.
It's not specifically when the mood, like, it's
seemingly random. And like, on your, like, further your point, Marco, it's even better if you can layer that with also changes in sound quality and coloring to support, like, so it's all happening at the same time, so it really feels like a shift through, like, cinema history or time or just any mindset in general. If you can pair all of those things together, like, it only amplifies the effect. So
it's just it was so frustrating. And I mean, I sent it in the group chat yesterday, right? Because I was telling Dan before we started recording, but, like, at one point I just started watching, like, a chicken recipe on YouTube because I was like, I was just scrolling to pass the time while this movie was going on.
Vegans are having a real hard time with this episode.
I know. And I have some chicken. I have some chicken in the freezer, and I found, like, a nice recipe, and I was like, ooh. And then I looked up from the recipe, and
you made the recipe?
Oh, I didn't make it yet, but I found the recipe, and I was like, this will be nice. Then I looked up, and the movie was just in 4:3, and I texted you guys, and I was like, am I okay? Like, I am not misremembering, right? Like, this movie wasn't in 4:3 the whole time, and you guys were like, No.
Correct,
It changed.
yeah.
It was like, okay.
It changed. I think within the first minute, it was widescreen, and then it went to 4:3 for the first time.
It was very early on, yeah. So, fun fact: did you know that Brie Larson was going to be the lead of this film? When it was announced that Netflix was going to make this film, it was announced January 2018. Charlie Kaufman was set to direct and everything. And in December, Brie Larson and Jesse Plemons were cast. But then in March of 2019, she was replaced by Jessie Buckley because of Marvel. But I don't really think it would have made that much of an impact on how much I liked this film anyway, so it's fine.
No, Jessie Buckley did a good job.
Yeah.
Again,
she did.
This is the first thing I ever saw her in, so.
I think this was also the first thing I saw her in, because I saw her obviously in The Lost Daughter after. But she was also good in that. Okay, and then this is mostly just for me. I don't want to go through like every single reference that happened in the film. We touched on a lot of them. But I remember specifically that one rant that the woman goes on when she's like randomly smoking the cigarette in the car about that like review of the film. Upon this rewatch specifically, I was like, what the fuck is happening? Maybe because I was high, but I was like, this is out of nowhere. She was not smoking a second ago. She's smoking in the car. She didn't even ask him. How rude. But that specifically is from, it's a critique of the movie A Woman Under the Influence from 1974, and it is taken verbatim from film critic Pauline Kael's review of the film. So that is just a little thing that I learned.
Great, love that was in this movie.
Yeah. I forgot about that part. I hated that. Like, that was just the most, so obviously, like, if you're in on the joke, you get it, and if you're
That's
not,
the thing. Like, maybe if I was intimately familiar with Pauline Kael, I would have loved it.
Yeah, which I'm sure a significant amount of people are.
Sure.
This movie seems like
I was joking.
Charlie Kaufman's inside joke with himself. Like, why? Why even pull that movie review from the 1970s?
And who's like, how many people are sitting around reading a book of movie reviews for movies they've never watched?
Like, I can understand if it was like a really famously, like, truly awful movie review, or like a review like that maybe a critic got so wrong about like a super famous movie.
Roger Ebert or something.
Yeah, like a Roger.
Yeah.
Like, I remember, like, Roger Ebert, I think, kind of shat on The Godfather Part 2 when it first came out. And then, later was like, oh, I fucked up. Like, that, to me, would be, like, a worthwhile thing. Because it's, like, it would stand out in some way.
Bad review, yeah.
Yeah, like, this is just, like, okay.
But also, like, specifically the reason it was a Pauline Kael review is because in his room he had a book of reviews from Pauline Kael. But the movie review that she recited wasn't even in that specific book we saw.
Nice.
So it's like, we're just supposed to assume this janitor is obsessed and has memorized every single review Pauline Kael has ever written. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was
perfect.
It was annoying. But I also learned something in my research, simply because they had that like offhand comment about how people who are coddled by their mother turn out to be gay or whatever. So then in my research, I just found something out that I found fascinating. So I'm going to share with you guys.
All right.
So the Unnamed Girl, which is what Jessie Buckley's character is called in credits and stuff, mentions that homosexuality is considered a pathology in the DSM before 1973, and I found out that the DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So homosexuality, so just being gay, was considered a mental disorder. It was added in 1952 and just taken out in 1974. Eventually, Evelyn Hooker, which I guess is a scientist or psychologist or something, researched and argued that the comparison between happy and well-adjusted homosexual men and heterosexual men found no difference, because initially it was thought that men were only homosexual because they were afraid of women and not because they were actually attracted to men.
Yeah,
and so I just found that
sense.
all fascinating, because that's like pretty recently. I mean, obviously, like, it's out of our lifespans because we're pretty young, but like still kind of fucked up that just like that long ago we were like, no, homosexuality is just people who are crazy.
Yeah. I did
and
know,
afraid of women.
I knew that, like, I didn't know the specific dates or anything, but I was aware
that
that
it was
before,
like in a book of listed mental disorders.
Yeah, like
I didn't know a book
very
of listed
recent.
mental disorders existed. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I
learned
did.
so much.
I knew that from Frasier.
Oh.
Because they reference it a few times in Frasier, is that, like, yeah, psychologists have this reference book, basically, to be like,
Okay.
oh, how, like, where does this? It's like a dictionary for fucking mental disorders.
Cool.
So I did know that existed, but I didn't know about the dates of this either.
But also really interesting that it only talks about male homosexuality and nothing about female homosexuality.
Yeah.
Are they assuming that doesn't exist? I don't know. Anyway,
I mean,
not the point.
Wonderful question. Yeah, who knows?
I also found what I find a fun fact is that director Charlie Kaufman wanted a real pig for the scene with the naked janitor, but he then learned that pigs can't walk on wet floors or turn their heads, so he had to change his mind.
Pigs can't turn their heads?
Apparently not.
That sucks.
That is maybe
for pigs or Charlie Kaufman?
For pigs.
For pigs, yeah. Okay, pigs can't turn their heads. Nice to know.
You know who else can't turn his head?
Batman?
Michael Keaton Batman.
I knew exactly where you were going with that.
Guys.
I actually just watched a compilation today of all the times that he had to bend his whole body.
I saw that video, but I didn't watch it. But it's
move in his outfit.
Yeah,
because
his neck specifically.
His cowl connects all in one piece.
It's just one solid. Yeah.
Okay, wait. Actually, I do have one thing that I only found out during research and didn't notice in both times of me watching the film. Is that you know how she kept the woman kept getting calls from people with different names? Every time she got a call from a woman and the name changed, the character's outfit was different after. Oh. Which also helps prove that it was a figment of his imagination and he didn't really have a concrete reference for her. Which I thought was cool when I read it, but I didn't notice. I think there were a few times where I was I don't remember her wearing that before, but I didn't really notice exactly when it changed or if it ever changed back.
Yeah, I noticed she was wearing different things than she was, but I didn't realize when the cutoff points were. But
apparently there was a direct link, which I appreciate. That's one of the things, we said, there was a lot of care taken into this film, and that is very clear, and that is one thing I definitely appreciate, even if I didn't exactly notice it.
Man, being a continuity person on this movie must have been the easiest job, because it's if you fuck up, it doesn't matter. It's all part of the movie. That too,
especially in editing and also on set, you don't have to worry about what they were wearing or what their hair looked like in the previous shot.
Does not.
It only enhances the effect that they're trying to go for.
Yeah, exactly. Okay,
do you have anything else to say before we think of ending things?
That's all I had. I'm really ready to end things.
Okay.
I just want to say, especially after a conversation, I wish I liked this movie. There is a lot of care and effort put into it, and there's a lot of good technical stuff in it, and there's a lot of good ideas, but I just
wish it was fun to watch.
Yeah, it doesn't...
Because I think I even like it in theory.
Yes.
I just wish I didn't hate every moment, not every moment of watching it, because obviously some things look cool, but most of it I did genuinely just was counting down the seconds until the ending, and that sucks, and I wish that wasn't true.
Well, and I think that goes back to the whole thing of there's no narrative thrust. Yeah. So why would you ever enjoy watching something without narrative thrust? Because you're just watching things happen.
Yeah, it's like sitting in a room for 2 hours and 14 minutes and trying to figure out how much longer you have to sit in the room.
Yeah.
I feel like this could have been a really expensively produced YouTube video, a little 10-minute storytelling of it. Because even there was a section I forgot to mention in the likes, where Jessie Buckley's character was just stuck in a train of thought and was continuously walking down the stairs. I thought that was cool and a really good depiction of being kind of stuck in your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this absolutely could have been a short film, let alone a minimal length feature length. Let alone not a 2-hour movie is what I'm trying to say.
I even think 90 minutes is too many minutes.
For this, yeah.
70 minutes.
If it's going to be a feature-length film, this is one of those, just make it as short as...
Or just make a short film. This could have worked
ideally should have been a short film.
Yeah.
Yes.
Probably could have been an Oscar-nominated short film.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised this wasn't nominated for any Oscars. Not even technical Oscars.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Kaufman might be one of the guys who's already keyed into, the Oscars don't fucking mean anything anymore.
Yeah. He strikes me as such. Yeah.
He's in the loop. Thanks again for listening to the Feature Length Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to us if you liked this video or audio. Give us a rating and review if the platform you're listening to us on allows that. If you want to stay up to date with the latest episodes of the podcast, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the bell to be notified when we post a new video, or follow the podcast on Spotify. If you want to connect with us directly, you can follow us on Instagram at FeatureLengthPodcast, or even send us an email at featurelengthpodcast@gmail.com. Catch you on the flip side.
Thanks for listening to the Feature Length Podcast.
Perfect.
We're just going to use that as the outro.